Good evening, dear friends, and welcome to our show. Here we are where spirit meets story, truth and mystery with your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell. We are journeying together through the deeper meanings behind today's world events, ancient wisdom, and the quiet whispers of the divine. We're going to reflect, remember, and reconnect. If this is your first time with us, welcome to the family. Make sure to follow us and ring that bell, check those checks, and click on that link to subscribe wherever you're watching and listening from wherever you are in the world. This show isn't just a broadcast. It's a broadcast with intention, with spirit, and with love. Now, here is Douglas.
Hey everybody, it's great to be with you tonight. It's kind of a historical day. Well, it is a historical day. Right now, humans are as far away from Earth as they ever have been at any time. As that is to say, at any time in recent memory, not including time of the pyramids and all those things where there might have been some communication between planets. But right now, Artemis is out there with astronauts zipping around, and they're on the far side of the moon as we speak during the show. So one of the great things for this is to celebrate that no matter what's going on here in the world. William Shatner was on CNN tonight, and he was saying, referring to his time in space. You know, he went up and came back down, and he felt grief at what a beautiful place this world is, and how the darkness of space affected or was in opposition to this beautiful planet. But he felt grief or sad because of what we're doing on this place. You know, humans were gobbling up our planet. And he felt sort of sad about that. And I kind of thought that was a good take. Here we are about to, we are in the process of getting as far away as we can from the planet, setting the stage for the gas station on the moon and the hip hop over to Mars, which I think is going to take 9 months traveling at that high rate of speed to get to Mars. So we're on the verge of reaching out to a planet, not just a moon, but a planet. And I can hardly wait to see what it's going to be like when we get there. I think it's been 50 years since we were on the moon, we meaning humans. And I remember staying up late, looking at my little black and white TV set in my room and watching Neil Armstrong come down the ladder and say those magic words, one small step for a man, one giant step for mankind. Wow, what a word, what a phrase. I was elated, and the whole world was looking up at the moon, and we're saying, there's a man on the moon right now. Matter of fact, there was two. As we know, Buzz Aldrin was there. So as long as we look at the situation from a perspective of right now, this minute, while my show is going on, there are human beings zipping around the moon, traveling at warp speed, I'll call it that anyway, and we have Captain Kirk saying what a marvelous feat this is and how we should take better care of our planet Earth. And at the same time, at the same moment, we have warfare in the Middle East, and we have threats of annihilation and bombing and demands for unconditional surrender. We have forces, I wouldn't say all the world's forces gathered in one place like the Bible predicted, but we have forces that are there. And those people that are defending themselves, they're pretty tenacious people. They're not going to give in easily. So making threats or threatening to bomb the planet, wipe out the whole country of Iran is just futile as far as my little teeny tiny opinion is. But here we are, my friends, as far away from the Earth as humans can be. And at the same time, we have World War III possibilities knocking on our doorstep. What a time this is. Have you felt off today? Have you been wondering, does it feel like it's tomorrow or it's odd or it's a strange time? Of course you have, because the world, all of the consciousness of the people on the world is divided. And we have this instability that's going on right now. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about this amazing moment that's going on right now as I'm broadcasting here live on the Soul Report of those people that are near and around the moon. I am so happy that we're going back to the moon. I know it cost a lot, and I know that it could be reinvested and help a lot of things in the world, but this is something that will go on, allow us to go on forever as we expand out. I was joking to Oz just before the program. It's like as those people are zipping around the moon, it's causing perhaps a disturbance. Maybe it's red flags going up, like, "Hi, we're over here." Maybe we're going to attract some visitors, or maybe we're going to further welcome them as they're already kind of, maybe sneaking around already, as some people think they're already here on the earth and being incognito, so to speak. So, on one hand, it's exciting, and on the other hand, it's scary. And I'm all for taking the adventure one step further myself. I wonder what it's going to be like when we hit the next planet, when we have a reservoir of fuel and people, because there's going to have to be a base built on the moon so that we can move on over and out to Mars. I wonder what that's going to be like. I did have a dream a long time ago, more like a vision, where there were people living between the dark side and the light side of a planet. And they had to live right on that sort of transitional place between dark, pitch dark, and the bright light, because it was the coolest place. They could live there in that temperate zone. If they were into the darkness, they would freeze. If they're into the light, they would cook. So that was about, I guess maybe 5 years ago I had that, where there was a colony of people. I didn't know what the planet was like, black on one side, white on the other. Well, it dawned on me, look up at the moon, my friend, and you can see that there is a dark side complete on one side and a light side on the other. So maybe, just maybe, I was looking at the colonization of the moon several years ago that's now about to happen. Archimedes 2 is it's carrying astronauts to the moon and back, and we trust they will arrive safely back here in the next few days. We're talking about this because 50 years ago, as I've just said, is when the last spaceship, I'm going to call it that, landed on the moon and brought our astronauts back. So the moon is no longer the destination. It is the beginning of our accelerated expansion into the universe. So when we thought of ourselves as earthbound beings, and we were looking at off-world beings as visiting us, well, now we're going to have a little bit of both. We're going to see ourselves as a spacefaring species, pardon me, exploring beyond our own planet, and we should all be proud of that. I wonder what my grandchildren are going to be like when they're my age. Will they be taking vacations on Mars or Pluto or who knows where? But this is a development of a long-term survival systems and long-term travel and missions to the planets. As we speak, this is what's taking place. So here we go. For thousands of years, the moon has been a symbol of mystery, cycles, intuition, mystery. And now, instead of only looking at it, we're going to go at it again. We're going to be there. William Shatner was talking about the dust that was going to get in all the machinery and how everything was going to be covered with the dust. He even named it. I can't remember what it was. Sound like Ritalin, but it wasn't. In any event, I thought, well, Captain Kirk, oh my gosh, we're talking about the nitty-gritty, so to speak. But again, all those problems have to be overcome for us to land on the moon. So as we move back to understanding that this is a time that has been long prophesized, we have to look closer at ourselves. We have to look at home here, where we are right now. One of the most common questions we're receiving from last week's show was from YouTube and social media and our live chat, which is open tonight. And so the basic question is, what's going to happen in the Middle East? What do you think? Ask your questions in the chat. Give us your comments. We'd love to hear from you. You are important. Have any of you had a dream or a vision about what's going on as far as being in space or looking at what's happening in the Middle East? It's certainly a weird day today. We're off our stride. The markets are holding steady. Everybody's holding their breath to see what's going to happen tomorrow night. We trust that humans, as we know humans, are going to use some common sense. And as such, some peaceful resolution can happen to what's taking place in Iran. What do you think? What do you think? Does might make it right? And should the people in Iran, which are of questionable, shall we say, uh, I'm going to say questionable activities as far as dealing with their own people in a brutality way, or is it just one of those aspects of we're finding our way where like attracts like, and the Iranian people are now put in a position. I'm talking about the people in authority, the people who have been quite violent to their own people, the people in control. Are we able to soften their hearts? Are they going to see the way that this is a better way to get along? Certainly, they have the grip on the world with the closing the Strait of Hormuz, and certainly they have more power in their political and economic ways than they do with the bombs, the missiles, and the Tomahawk missiles, etc. What is the solution? What do you think? I have my own ideas, but I want to know as we look forward and we try to find out through our dreams and visions, through the way of prophecy, what did the prophets of old have to say? Last we were talking about the great Edgar Cayce and also my mentor, Ross Peterson, and we mentioned Paul Solomon. These are the people who would be considered the modern day prophets, and they've all had this common thread about this time. It's called a time of chaos, a teaching or testing time. What do you think about that, my friends? Is this a time that we're going to be awakened? Is it a time for the karma of the world to come together? After all, we've been fighting wars and battles for hundreds of years. In this last century or two, certainly the world has been war in one stage or another. And now the almighty petrodollar is at stake, and the supply of oil throughout the world is now being choked off. And look what's happening. In just a very short order, the economic woes are mounting. The possibility of huge recession is going to, or is looming and is possible to arrive next year. This is going to be difficult for us. Gold and silver prices, which, if you know, I've been sort of repeating myself over the years, is that silver and gold were going to go up, precious stones, have some real estate, get out of debt. These are ways to keep your peace and to survive in this time of uncertainty. We're at the crossroads of civilization. We're at a point of all the faiths in the world. And historically, the region of tension, as many prophets, biblical and otherwise, have referenced, the region in the Middle East is that specific place, often called a tinderbox. But because of this long-standing complexity, are we coming to the end times? Are we coming to Armageddon? Are we coming to that point where only the outcome will be positive, that God will arrive, the Messiah may return? What do you think? Let us know in the chat and we'll address your questions. However, I'm interested to see, how do you feel about this? What's your intuition? What do you think today, my friends? Remember, the people who listen to the Soul Report show are quite intuitive. You're very intelligent. And of course, you're interested in the outcome of what's going on in the world. You know, prophecy rarely gives us exact timelines and fixed outcomes. Edgar Cayce was talking about this is not just a time of prophecy, it's a time of pressure, which means, you know, the elements are coming together, and as such, change is afoot, howbeit a struggle, coordinated, loving, or not. What do you think is going to happen? The prophets have spoken of this time where the Euphrates was drying up. the Euphrates River, and certainly that's taking place. There was also a prediction that the seas will go black, that the skies will go black. That could happen should there be a nuclear explosion, or if there are severe damage to those oil tankers, which are laden with oil right now. Can you think of that? The Strait of Hormuz going all black because 3 or 4 or 5 tankers were opened up. Just think about that. The economic catastrophe that would happen, or the environmental catastrophe that would happen, I mean to say. So there is a difference between, possibility and probability. And then there is, fate and karma. So the tension can escalate, that's for sure. Military presence can increase the risk. Somebody can make a mistake. They can push the wrong button. They can shoot at somebody the wrong thing. They can send a missile the wrong way. And when they're at that verge, that fulcrum point, that could start the war. That could start the chain reaction to start that war. That is, well, the calamity of that war. So many situations are seemingly are ready to explode, but negotiations may help stop it. But behind the scenes, there has to be some powerful minds, common sense, anger and hatred and revenge have to be set aside. And that's going to be one of the most difficult things for those people in control to do, because it's their spiritual lesson. It's their spiritual evolution to overcome the hatred and the darkness and the thirst for revenge, and to set that aside for the greater good. This is what we're expecting those people in Iran to do. So on one hand, we can't beat them over the head and tell them we're going to bomb them back into the Stone Age. And then on the other hand, give them ultimatums, do this or do that. Otherwise, we're going to attack your civilian utilities, bridges, which are war crimes, by the way, and try to make them bow down and capitulate. We can't do that. We cannot do that. That's not the spiritual way. In all the great times in the past, when the prophets came through from Moses to Christ, it was always a way of peace or a way of love. And to put aside the hatred, if possible, so that peace can come forward. This is the way it is today. Think of it. Humans are going around the moon right now. Something that in my generation, when I was a young man, we didn't think was possible. Now we're talking as if it's a done deal and we're off to Mars tomorrow. What can we do about the Middle East? Is it possible that something can happen? Is there a great strong man that will come forward? Will the Messiah arrive? What do you think? What are the possibilities? Something has to give. Remember, this is a war of choice, not of necessity. Think of it that way. There was a decision to go to war for those in the West who are not immediately affected by the war, by the killing and the atrocities and all the things that the Israelis defended themselves against, Hamas and whatnot. But it was a war of choice. Could it have been lesser? Could it have been done, in a more intelligent way? Well, I hope so. But here we are on the verge of might makes right, and that never, ever will win. So what do you think, my friends? Have you got any questions? Come on the chat and let us know. Have you have a perception or ideas? We'd like to hear from you. What do you think is most likely? Escalation or resolution? Miracles happen. This could be set aside, hopefully tomorrow night, where there is, I guess, a willingness to open up the Strait of Hormuz, or the promises or the negotiations to start. So that's the beginning point. The end point is when there is escalation to military destruction, completely unnecessary. Let's wait. Let's not just work on it tomorrow night. Let's wait. But in the meantime, let's pray that there are common sense minds that are negotiating right now, that the military people are saying, no, we don't want to go and kill civilian populations to make a point. No, we want to defend ourselves, but we don't want to go on the aggression and bomb the aircraft carriers with dirty bombs, or to infect as many casualties to the military people as we possibly can. Something I've said before that I saw was going to happen. Let's not escalate to that. So again, my friends, do you have any strong intuition about these global events? I can also jump here and say, anybody have any intuition about perhaps a visitation, another flyby by our spaceship that's flying by the moon? Wouldn't that be something? Do you trust political decision makers, or do you look deeper? What's your pleasure, my friends? Oz, do we have any questions in the chat just now?
Yeah, there's people are wondering about organizations like the Temple Institute and the Temple Mount Faithful, who are creating sacred vessels, training priests, and researching the exact location to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Do you think that'll ever come to be, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, there has to be the gates to the temple have to be opened. And right now there's a graveyard that was put there to stop any construction. So the gates to the temple, to Good Solomon's temple, have to be open. And are there always people in the I don't want to call them secret societies, but let's say the keepers of the prophecy and the keepers of the faith? I would suspect there is. I can see people in a dark cavern, yellow walls, looks like it's a rounded cavern. That's what I'm looking at right now. And they're planning, but it's not the right time. First, some of the prophecies have come true, like the Euphrates has drawn up, the river is drying up, but the graves that are in front of the doors of the gates to the temple, they're there to prevent the access to the gates. They have to be washed. I've seen them washed away. Those gates have to be opened first. So, to the question, yes, there are always societies that are keeping the faith. They know that this is a time that has to go by. Humans, as we know, humans on a world scale have to learn our lessons. Edgar Cayce talking about this as a teaching time or a testing time, the same as Ross Peterson. We have the opportunity to, in a peaceful way, get back to where we came from, to prepare for the spiritual awakening that is taking place. Unfortunately, many of us in the world don't care about that. We only care about hatred and revenge. And like animals, we're fighting with one another, a knee-jerk reaction, strike and strike back. Those souls, unfortunately, have to be put asunder. If you read the scripture, they've been loosened that they can be in the world for a while, but they'll have to be put asunder so that 1,000 years of peace will come back to the world. So I think that the question is, are there guardians and watchers and spiritual beings who are keeping the lid on things or being prepared for this oncoming time of peace? Yes, there are. I don't know who they are. I'm not a member of them, although the Knights Templars and the Masons and the secret societies, you know, there are all kinds of people in religions who are dedicated to maintaining their religion. All of the great world, all the world societies have, I'm going to call it a military bent, but it's not that. It's the discipline of being like soldiers, like the Templars, or like the gatekeepers, or like the Vatican has the guard. It has to have that kind of structure. And I hope I'm not going too far from the question, but in Knights of Columbus, for instance, in the Catholic Church, There are dedicated people who believe and are willing to act upon the belief to maintain the certainty of their religion all over the world. And they're all doing what? Waiting for the appropriate time. And that a time is coming. That time is coming. So yes to the question. I'm not familiar with those groups of people, but in a generic way, what I've just described is sort of information I've gathered from many sources. Yes,
Yep.
they're getting prepared. Go ahead.
From the Daniel on YouTube asks, what spiritual lessons are we to learn from the conflict in the Middle East and the role of the U.S.?
Well, number one, might does not make right. You can't bully people. You can't harm people. You can get people to agree, but they'll have mental reservations. And no great conflict that ever was inflicted on a people to change their way of life, to change their beliefs, succeeded. It was one of the greatest religions, one of the greatest demonstration of that is in the Ottoman Empire. And before that, the Arab communities that were taking over the Middle East. When they arrived, first thing they did is abolished sacrifice, human sacrifice. They abolished slavery, and then they allowed their society to worship as they pleased. Sometimes they incorporated some of the deities or the religious ceremonies, and those societies historically grew. Universities happened in Iran and the Middle East. The Arab empires and the people in the past were far greater aware of mathematics, calculus, astronomy, and they washed themselves because they knew about germs and things like that. They had medicines. That was 2,000 years ago or less. And so the question is, the lesson or karma here is that might does not make right. And as such, the forces in the world now are anger, hatred, indifference, prejudice. These are the old sins or weaknesses bubbling up. This is the frailty. This is the weakness in the human mind, human consciousness. And so these situations have to come to a head. So there can be putting aside these prejudice, these fears. All the prejudice that are out there, in my opinion, are based on fear. People who think that they have to be demonstrative of their strengths over other types of people, whatever their sexual orientation is, whatever their religious point of view is, whatever their status is. These are the people that are afraid. If they weren't afraid, they wouldn't care. There would be complete confidence in their religious beliefs. There wouldn't be a seeking for the right one or the best one, or ours is the greater religious point of view. When Christ came into the world, he came as the Messiah, the chosen one, the one to bring the peace, and the other prophets that were there as well, from Muhammad to Moses to Father Abraham. There was supposed to be peace and an inclusion, not an expelling of people that are different, who maybe worship God in a different way, who maybe believe in God in a different way. The point being is they believed in God. And that is something that humans, as we know, humans have to rise up and accept. If we give free will and free choice to everybody, which God has given to us all, then we have to honor free will and free choice. People can will and they can believe any way they wish, as long as they don't cause harm into anybody. Causing harm is not a demonstration of free will and free choice. That's something else. So as we look at this situation right now, the lessons are many, and there will be, unfortunately, a great loss of life. the Earth, the planet is rebelling. That's why we're having weird weather patterns, why we're having more volcanic activity than ever before. Volcanic ash is being put into the atmosphere quietly. It's not in the news all the time, but there is huge amounts of volcanic ash in the stratosphere. Earthquakes are happening readily. Storms are severe. We're getting used to these types of changes with storms and volcanic activity. We're actually looking at volcanic eruptions as kind of a place to go and visit. Look what's happening in Hawaii. The volcanic activity there is enormous. And not too long ago, a couple of weeks, the whole place was flooded out. Never before or in such a long time. Mount Vesuvius and Mount Etna are rumbling. They're waking up. And this was sort of the point that Edgar Cayce and others have said, that when Mount Etna and Mount Vesuvius go off at the same time, that starts the countdown to the next world calamity or world change. The world has gone through such changes at least 4, maybe 5 times, as I understand Cayce's experiences or reporting on what has gone on in the past times. So the lessons here are many. Compassion is the key to this. Learning to love your neighbor as you would be loved. Learning to accept people as they are. As long as no one is causing harm and everybody is cooperating, we're on the right track. The people who point out the weaknesses, the prejudice, the differences, and then become very angry and hostile and want to do harm, want to eradicate people who are different, these are the forces that are being influenced by the dark forces, the negative forces, those souls that are on those violent planes above, the astral plane and beyond. Remember, just because you die doesn't mean you're a good person. And people have passed on with violence for decades now, and they are in those heavenly dimensions, still angry and still looking to get even. These are the lower realm entities. The higher realm entities go to the light, and they are there to teach us, to show us, to be our way showers, learning how to love in a way that we've never quite got a hold of yet, and that is unconditional love. If we can find that, then we look for that, and then we find it in others, we can overcome the karma, the conditions of extreme. Remember, karma in itself is not a thing, it's a process, cause and effect. If you don't cause any harm, how can harm come back to you? The effect of harm. If you are giving tolerance, compassion, peace, that comes back to you. Wouldn't that be nice? And if that's coming back to you with compassion, kindness, understanding, how can there possibly be room for negativity, harm and darkness and difficulty and hatred? There's no room, because that's not being pushed out. It's not coming back. This is the great lesson of karma, of spirituality, of overcoming sin. Don't give out bad stuff, because bad stuff comes back. Remember the story, judge not lest ye be judged. That's a form of karma, cause and effect. So when you see somebody and you don't like them, the spiritual lesson is to say, what is it I see in that person that I don't like? Because I'm recognizing it as being part of me. To the same emotional intensity, you own that. That's what you don't like about yourself. To the spiritually aware person, there's something to work on. Oh, they always talk so much, I can't stand it. They're always talking about themselves. Oh, it's terrible. Hold it. What is it you're seeing in this other person? This other person is talking about themselves. They're the center of attention. You don't like it and you really, it's really bothering you. Well, my friend, have a look at yourself. This is what you're doing. And you recognize it in others because you have it within yourself. Okay, that's a spiritual lesson. Here on the Soul Report, we can talk about more as we progress through the idea that our community, you and me, my friends, are on a journey to help each other, to point out those, let's say, those little points that need a little polishing up, those little weak points, those cracks in our armor. If we can point them out to each other and then we can decide to work on them, we can form a community that has understanding, is compassionate, is patient, tolerant, and looks to help wherever we can without compensation as a consideration. Those are the aspects of a spiritual being, somebody who's helping wherever they can. And by doing those things and following through, there are other lessons that come on top of that. You, my friend, will advance to be a very highly developed spiritual being. You don't need to get an award or a flag or have any acknowledgement of it. Matter of fact, to be humble is the best way. So as you progress this way, as we see what's going on in the Middle East and in the skies or heavens above, we can see a glimpse into ourselves. And so how is this going to come out in the Middle East? When you turn on the tube, the video, when you turn on the social media, are you angry? Do you become provoked? Do you want to say something? How dare they? Do you want to add your comments? Perhaps you're swearing at somebody. Perhaps you're condescending. That is the essence. That's the thin edge of the wedge. That's the essence of you finding out who you are. Pull it back. The best is fermez la bouche, as they say in France. Close your mouth. The tongue is the rudder that steers your life. The words you put out in front of you through talking, screaming, speaking, that's what you put in front of yourself. Is it a storm or is it pleasant winds? It's up to you by using the words that you use and the thoughts that you're creating that will allow you to be a better spiritual person. And so the karma of the Middle East is, unfortunately, learning how not to hate, learning to forgive atrocities, learning to overcome the grief so that you don't seek revenge. These are race mind patterns. These are national karmic events. They're difficult, yes, but difficulty, the patterns of hate and anger and frustration and all the frailties of human nature, that's where it got us right now. No matter where you are in the world, where you are is exactly from your history, your thoughts and actions has projected you to this point. You can change this way. And that's what we're here to do on the Soul Report Live, is to point these things out, is to make it a sort of a point of view that you can recognize and you can change without mental reservations. You will find the truth. It's much better to be kind than it is to be mean. It's much better to be giving than it is to be stingy or greedy. It's much better to help. And if you see somebody on the street and they're struggling and you're going to put a quarter in their hand or $1, try putting $20 in their hand and see what happens. They'll cry. They'll hug you. They'll be so happy because you're giving them that appeals to the human soul, compassion. And it's a joyful thing. You will be surprised that you can change somebody's life, maybe forever, but at least change your life for that day and that moment. However, that's a decision you'll make. If somebody puts their hand out to you, my teaching is, then you're obligated to put a coin in their hand. They're reaching out to you. If they don't reach out to you, you can pass them by. If they catch your attention, then maybe you ought to go over and give them a coin or a dollar or more. Those are the rules on how to give compassionately. If somebody puts their hand directly to you, this is God putting somebody in your path that you can help. How much you give to them, that's totally up to you. Do you want to buy them a jacket? Do you want to buy them a hamburger? Perhaps they need a wheelchair. Perhaps they need a cane. Perhaps they need a coat. And perhaps they just need you to ask their name to give them some dignity. These are the lessons in the microcosm that we're learning in the macrocosm of the Middle East. You cannot threaten people with death and destruction and expect them to behave, to accept it. Turn it around. If somebody was coming to you and you lived in Washington and they said, we're going to bomb the daylights out of Washington, we're going to obliterate it, the White House, the Lincoln Memorial, all gone, unless you believe like we believe, what would you do? You'd fight like hell. And so we got to look at the situation from a perspective above, looking down from an overview, also on the ground, looking at how each other is being treated by one another. Now, the soldiers don't have bad karma here, by the way. The soldiers are disciplined, they're defending their country, they're being ordered into combat. It's not bad karma. They joined the military, and the day that they joined, that was the path they were on that leads them up to this time where they're going to lay their life down or they're going to take a life. The time that they chose, that point of choosing, that's when they started this pattern of karma. Now, when they're in combat, they can act with compassion. They don't have to act with violence. I mean with, not violence, but with hatred. They have to shoot somebody. It's done with as best easy way it possibly can, with a humane way. Them, the enemy, or themselves. It's better that the enemy passes away, in my humble opinion. However, no need to be vicious and mean and hateful. This only brings more personal karma to the soldier. Don't shoot civilians. Help the children. Help the fallen soldier who's wounded. Patch up his wounds and take him to the first aid. These are spiritually advanced patterns that combatants or soldiers would act upon. But if there's hatred or enjoyment in killing, then you're invoking personal karma, and you'll have to go through the lessons of finding out that for yourself. So from the microcosm on the personal level to the greater level, I've sort of laid out here some simple and perhaps minor points of the lessons that are going to be learned in the Middle East. I want you to remember always, I've lived long enough to see that enemies in the future will become friends. Germany and Europe, Japan, America, French and English, combatants for hundreds of years, now the best of friends. As we look at the world, we don't know enough about the karmic relationships, but I can, without any doubt in my mind or hesitation, say enemies now will be friends in the future. Absolutely. Another question, Oz.
Yes, we have a question from the Daniel. He asks, how do you think Israel is going to fare going forward?
I've been thinking about this myself. From October the 7th, when those terrorists did really bad things to the children, we're all familiar with that, with Hamas and the tragedies, the evil that was inflicted on those children. This gave cause for the people in Israel to, I'm going to say, retaliate, but more like to defend themselves against this evil. Here's the point. When you defend yourself up to a point of equality, in other words, the bad guys can't attack you anymore, they're smitten, they're neutralized. Going beyond that point, you now incur the karma of revenge. So from a certain perspective, the defense of their nation, the defense of neutralizing the really bad guys, Hamas, because the Hamas people were also, they're pretty violent to their own people as well. We understand we're not dealing with angels here. We're dealing with some pretty animalistic development of people in those armed services or factions. If it could be stopped, if it could be like, okay, we've made our point, we've enacted justice, the bad people are all suffering punishment, humans being humans. We don't need to attack other innocents. When you do that, when you step over the line and you start spreading the war, then you start to fail. Now, from a perspective of what's happening, it's way too complicated for me on this show to be able to explain the shortcomings or the benefits of what's going on. But from a very basic philosophical way, it's if there can be a holding short now that the totality of submission from the bad guys has happened, then don't take any further action to cause harm, death, or evil, and then you'll do better. But since there seems to be an expansion of the war, humans are very good at doing that, then there's going to be retaliation. And Israel will always be Israel. The nation will always be where it is. It's suffered greatly. Remember, Israel was started, if I can say started, was identified with Moses. And you remember Moses had certain opinions on how to deal with places or people that they conquered, sort of a scorched earth kind of thing. And so the balance from the times of Moses was happening during the time of perhaps the Second World War. I say perhaps, I don't know. And now we're in a situation where Israel is a mighty nation, has friends around the world, friendly nations that support it. It would be to the best interest of those people in charge of Israel, those spiritual leaders, those political leaders, to come to a point of making peace. If they can do that, then great things will happen. But if they insist on taking revenge upon revenge upon revenge, then the pathway is a slippery slope indeed. The Middle East has been often called the tinderbox. Israel has always been in the middle of it. And for whatever reasons God has provided, Israel has struggled. A country was born out of nothing. After the Second World War, the Israelis found their nation, and they succeeded under great difficulty. They should maintain and remember those times so that they don't inflict the same difficulties on other people of other nations, of other religious views, and then greatness would be at hand. So what I'm saying is, depending upon the people, the politicians, the military leaders, Netanyahu as the president, if they can hold back and show some compassion and kindness now with their enemies, then they have a chance to be a great nation. If they do not, then more of the same is going to happen. more conflict, more death. It's not what I'm saying, it's what I'm seeing in my mind right now. I hope they choose the way of peace. Oz?
Yes, there's a question about the U.S. and the strife that's occurring here. Could it lead to civil war or fracturing the country?
It's already happening, my friends. I was in Spain around 2006 or a little bit later. And prophets in South America and Spain communicate a lot more than you would be aware of. It's sort of like America communicating with Europe. And I was asked if I thought there was going to be civil war in the United States. And I said, no, it's impossible. I stand corrected now. There is going to be a time of recession next year. There are going to be more shortages. And certainly with the immigration police, there have been atrocities. The political structure is them and us. The next election, I'm predicting that the independents will come up the middle and take seats. Perhaps it'll be a third party in the US. But in America, there is no other country in the country like America. The opinions are strong. And the unfortunate thing about America is that the whole country is armed, and people don't behave well when they're angry and they have arms. And so what's going to happen is more chaos. And again, there won't be a civil war like the one where the blue and the gray were fighting on the streets, but there is already a civil war right now. It's between the rich, the super rich, and the rest of us. Oligarchs and billionaires, multi-billionaires, are taking positions of governance in the country. George Carlin was once famous for saying, there's the people on the street, the poor, there's the middle class, and then there's the upper class or rich. And the upper class, to stay where they are, cause the middle class and the lower class to fight amongst themselves so that they can keep the people preoccupied with battles, with infighting. So that the middle class are distracted from what's going on with the super rich. And the poor are there to scare, this is what he said, scare the crap out of the middle class. Can we come to a place of equality? Can we come to a place of balance? This is what America was started on, the principles of America. The Statue of Liberty says it all. It's the application not to be afraid. Hope can come to those who are seeking a better way. You see, the problems have to exist so that everybody says, there's got to be a better way. We can't exist we can't continue like this. And when that happens, that's when the spiritual wheels start turning. And instead of having more death, more separation, more isolation, more fear, people start to work together. And you have the great American spirit, not to be divided, but to work with each other. And that's what's happening all the time. You can see it when people get into difficulty. Americans reach out to help each other. When great calamity comes upon the country sticks together. Right now, unfortunately, with the internet and with the way the society is, there are billionaires who don't pay taxes or they pay very little. And there is, unfortunately, a class of very rich people who can influence politics and therefore defend themselves by paying less taxes, getting more control over the world, buying more buying more property in the country, etc. The answer to this is being fair, following the Constitution, which is an amazing document. And if that's followed, then the country can be at peace. The people at the top, some of them are very nice, wonderful, moral people. They provide a lot of service and a lot of generosity to the rest of the country. It's the few who can't seem to get enough. They have to have more power, more money, more property, at the exclusion of their countrymen and women. Those are the bad ones. Those are the people that need to be reminded that America is we the people. Equality, fairness, justice. These are the principles in the Constitution. So can there be an elevation of the American mindset where we're not fighting and there's not civil war? Yeah, of course, absolutely. This is the moral way. And I can tell you, just look at history. Countries that fall into this plague of no man's land, of greed, of lust for power, what they attract at the top of the leadership in the country are incompetent people who sell their integrity for position or money or privilege. These people don't last long. They either get sick and die, they are removed from their position unexpectedly, they lose all that they have, and the country changes. But remember what's happening in America now when you see these protests for no kings, you're seeing the American spirit rise up again. Remember, people came from Europe because there were kings, and there were atrocities, and there was religious persecution. That's what made America. The immigrants from faraway places coming to look for justice. So that's what made America. That's in its genes. America will always be a world leader. But right now it's got to go through some, well, let's call it shakeout, some karmic lessons, some spiritual development. Because you see, in a place like America and other countries in the British Commonwealth, etc., including Australia and India, if there is not the following through of fairness for all, then that unfair, let's call them part of society, continues like a cancer in the body to grow. And then there comes the day of reckoning and the cancer is cut out and the body has to go through a healing process. Now that might be a very simple way of saying that what you're seeing now is this teaching or testing time that Edgar Cayce was talking about. We can avoid world calamity or world change by this teaching or testing time, teaching us to love one another, and I mean respect, be kind, be fair, treat each other with dignity. That's the teaching time. The testing time is, can we do it? It doesn't matter what your political point of view is. It only matters that the politicians are moral and just. They are doing a job and a service to lead their constituents to a more prosperous, healthy, and peaceful life. That's what politicians are supposed to do. Negotiate with each other, deal with each other, so there can be fairness on all sides of the question. And that takes a politician with a spiritual, moral attitude. Make sense? We have time for a couple more questions.
Well, there's one about China and Russia. You think they're going to keep things in check in some way?
I was thinking about this the other day, and I could see a room full of Russians. They were laughing their heads off at what's going on beyond their borders. They couldn't believe the destruction that is taking place, the division is taking place with the Western NATO countries, and America for that matter. Remember, communism means that Mr. Putin owns everything. Socialism, in a communist perspective, means the government owns everything. To be social means that everybody loves each other and you take care of each other. That's being socially interactive. For instance, all the fire departments are a social service. They're taking care of the people. Police department, the same, social workers. So when we see countries where, like Kim Jong-un, he's scared stiff of what Mr. T is doing in the world right now. He is ferociously building nuclear weapons and missiles because he believes that he's going to be attacked the same as what's happening in Iran. China is like the grandfather, the know-all, wise, I'm going to say, grandfather, sage perspective. Remember, China hasn't started too many wars in the last 200 years, have they? They have one of the mightiest military in the world right now. They're not invading Taiwan. They're managing Taiwan. Taiwan and China are as Mr. Singh would say, it's one country with two political, two systems. So you have diverse democracy and communism, if you will, in China, living side by side, managing. So China is, and has been, my friends, if you look, buying up all the ports and all the places for trade around the world. They are deeply involved in Africa, which will be the next great place of wealth, publicly, or more well known, put it that way. So Russia is unable to conquer Ukraine. Why? Because the Ukraine people are innovative, strong-willed, fighting for their lives, and they didn't run away. Remember, Mr. Putin lined up all the tanks one day and was going to invade the country for no good reason, as far as I could see, other than he wanted to reclaim more land for Russia. All dictators want to do that, you see. They want to increase the land mass as their own property. Just look at history and you'll see that carrying out. Roman Empire, for instance, Genghis Khan, the Ottoman Empire. Anyway, the point is that all of this is so unnecessary. There is no real reason for Russia to be invading Ukraine other than to beat them, the Ukraine people into submission, and then for Russia to go on to Sweden and other countries that border Russia and take them over. Land acquisition, commodity acquisition, rare minerals, making computer chips. This is what it's all about. It's always about commodities. So China doesn't really, I don't want to say care, but China is disinterested in conflict, but they are sure making a huge effort economically. Are they not? They're doing amazing things. If you have any videos on what's going on in China, you're seeing they're building super highways, bridges, byways. The amount of construction that's going on in China has been enormous. They're developing their own country from the inside out. Russia also has assets, but they're not waiting to see what happens in the Middle East. There's reports that Russian agents have been advising the people in Iran where military assets have been located. Russians cannot be considered an ally of America, nor should they. They're historically at odds. China is just sitting on the sidelines, adapting and expanding. The West is spending money on things that don't matter. The country, the social activities of the country, as I was talking about earlier, are being gobbled up. A country can pride itself on how it takes care of its citizens, and in particular, how it takes care of the invalid, the poor, the sick, the old. That's how a country is evaluated by the spiritual forces above. So does Russia and China have an interest? Do they have a care? Not at all. They're the rich people, as I spoke about earlier, that want to keep the middle class fighting with each other so they can walk in and clean up. That seems to be what's happening. Time for one more question before we go to commercial.
All right. We have a question back about the moon. There's a question by Real wondering if there was a civilization on the moon at one time.
Well, having not lived there in my recent memory, I'm sure we're going to find artifacts or something. There are people who have described their living on Mars and having coming to Earth as vacations and traveling back and forth. I think we're going to find artifacts or something that's going to be there more than the junk that we've left there. I mean, there's a lot of space junk that we've left on the moon. Various nations, China in the South Pole area, for instance, India being there in the South Pole, I think is also there. But I would wonder what would that, remember that vehicle that was on the moon, the lunar rover? I would love to see what kind of condition that would be in. To just go over and start it up or what? That's childhood fantasy there, but I don't think we're going to see the idea of civilizations, but I think we'll see perhaps curious things that look like they could have been from extraterrestrials or, shall we say, travelers, but I don't think we're going to see anything specific right away. Maybe later when we start to go into the planet and find out that it's not made of the same things that we thought it was. Anyway, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back for the close of the show.
Ready for the future? A future filled with challenges, changes, and opportunities? Discover the New Earth by Douglas James Cottrell, Ph.D., a groundbreaking guide to understanding the evolution of our planet. Learn how to prepare yourself and your loved ones for the unpredictable. With insights from the Akashic Records and quantum meditation, this book offers precise predictions and practical advice. Explore how geographic areas will be affected and become a co-creator in shaping the new era of our planet. Over 370 pages of essential knowledge. Secure your ultimate guide to the future. Order the New Earth today.
And welcome back to the show, my friends. I have some books behind me. These are my books, The New Earth, Conversations with the Akashic, and a New Age Health Guide. My website is douglasjamescottrellstore.com. Okay, yeah, my other website, we're having a little issue with it. So douglasjamescottrellstore.com, and you can pick up these books. I want to thank you all for coming here tonight and listening to us. And just remember, as we continue through this time, we're here on the Soul Report Live to help you find your inner way. We want you to develop your abilities. We want you to question the universe. I want you to question the inner universe. And I'm going to be here to help you find that inner way. We have more interesting shows coming up. We have some exciting guests coming in the near future. But don't forget to please subscribe to our show. Let your friends and neighbors know that we're here to answer your questions. And we look forward to seeing you here, right here on the Soul Report Live show next Monday. Until then, Jack Bailick, co-producer, and Oz behind the curtain, and myself want to wish you peace and prosperity. God bless. I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. We'd like to hear from you. Give us your suggestions for future shows, and let us know what you think. We're here on social media and look forward to seeing you there. So I'll say good night, God bless, and good luck.